Hello and welcome to Points in the Podcast. I am Elias Schuster. As always, I am joined by Matt Rooney. And Matt, it is training camp week. It's media day week. It's basketball week. It's just things are happening once again.
We have actual things going on. We're seeing
It's
players doing things with their teams and their uniforms. We're getting there. We're getting there. The calendar turned to October. It means we're really getting there. This is such a great month for sports.
I know it's lovely. We end up seeing football season. Obviously, it dominates. It dominates the until pretty much it
I
ends, and
see your
then
Bears hat there.
oh yeah, of course. I had to sport the Bears hat today after what we saw yesterday. Finally a win after 14 straight game drought. So had
I'm a
to.
little disappointed. I walked to my coffee shop this morning about 2 blocks away. I popped on a Bears hoodie for the first time after a Bears game in 15 games or whatever, 14 games, I think he
Yeah,
said.
because you can't
No,
support them
no,
after.
I can like, during the week, sure, but not the day after.
No,
Nobody was wearing a Bears anything. They were all just in regular. Like, what are we doing here? We just come on now.
you gotta. Yeah, I mean, maybe they want to see more than one, but I'll just take one after everything that we've
Yeah,
seen. It's
but
been
everything
ugly.
starts with one. Starts with one.
Everything,
You got
yeah,
to start somewhere.
everything. Exactly. And that's what a lot of teams in the NBA have been doing this week. It starts with one practice. You build up that morale, you build up that team camaraderie.
The
You
pro
start
transition right there.
Yeah, you start kicking things into high gear for the preseason, which technically, actually, we'll talk about it in a second, started yesterday in Abu Dhabi with the Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the rest of the preseason will kick off over the next couple of days. So the ball is rolling. The orange rubber ball is bouncing up and down the court, and the NBA season is right around the corner. So I think we're gonna start this show off just going through
I
some
guess
weekly
this should
bullet
be
points.
preseason bullets. I got to change that.
Oh yeah, NBA
We're in the
preseason bullets. There you
preseason,
go.
Eli.
There you go. Look at that change of banner right on the right on. We do a lot of changing of the banners here
I
on
do.
the
I
live
mean,
show.
like I said, I used to work in graphics and TV. I'm used to changing the
It's
banners
just
on the
quick.
fly.
Yeah, we're
You
always
got to be
ready.
ready.
So we're gonna
That's
start.
when you guys see me typing like this, trying to be all sly, but my arms pop up. That's all I'm doing. I'm changing a banner.
You talk about me having a pro transition. You're all pro on the graphics and
It's
the
like riding
behind
a
the
bike.
scenes management. Yeah.
You're riding a bike. Some things you never forget.
So we're going to start here with our NBA preseason bullet points. Not a ton to get into this week, even though there was media day, there was training camp. We try to give you some of the more important news around the league. We're not going to go through each team specifically and give you how in shape everybody feels and
Best
how
shape of their lives.
how everybody's going to fix everything with their free agent signings. Every free agent signing is the exact perfect fit and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. We don't need to, we there's a lot of mud out there, and we're just going to try to sift through it and give you some of the important bullet points. So of course, the first thing is, like I already said, training camps have started, right? Every team is going through training camp right now. Every team should be tipping off their preseason games this weekend. And for us close to home, the Chicago Bulls will play the Milwaukee Bucks on Sunday.
Sunday.
That will be their first look of preseason action. They'll play maybe Damian Lillard and Giannis. I don't know if they'll play. It's the preseason, you never know. But I'm assuming we'll get a few minutes of those two on the court together. So
Probably.
that should be really exciting to see what they look like. And some of the other big teams out there to watch when it comes to their first preseason games. You have teams like the Suns. Want to see how potentially if we get a look at that Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, trio. How's that looking out there? You're going to want to take a look at a team like, Portland, simply because it's a young squad. They have a lot of young firepower.
Portland became, after that trade, like a team that I'm going to be a lot more intrigued to watch this year, just because, like, the ceiling might have been lowered a little bit, at least for this year, because Lillard's not there. But
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
they kind of just went from team that we know can't really get by the second round of the playoffs if all things go well, to like, all right, they're not as good, but they're really young. They have some really young, talented pieces, and they could be like fun this year. Like it kind of depends on how good Scoot Henderson is, like how early, but like that could be a really fun young team to watch this year that I've just got a lot more intrigued to keep an eye on.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, Portland, and we'll talk about them, a little bit later. I think we are, right? Is that
I
in
believe
this
so.
division?
They're
I
in this.
believe so. Yeah,
If
they're
the
in this
Portland
division.
Trailblazers are not in the Northwest
They are in the
Division, there's
Northwest
something
Division.
very wrong with the
Yeah,
division
so
names.
on later on the show,
We need realignment.
they will be they will be a part of the conversation. But absolutely, right? I think they're one of the more fun teams preseason and regular season to keep an eye on, and not because of any high expectations, but just because of the talent that they have on the floor. And looking else around the league, just in terms of some preseason teams that will be interesting to keep an eye on. The Celtics, obviously, with the addition of Drew Holiday, should
Mm-hmm.
be fun to watch. I think Memphis could be a fun team to see, just because we know Ja Morant's out. What's that team going to look like as they as they try to piece things together without him? They've obviously done a very good job of it in the past, but they've added some new pieces and switched things up a little bit in that backcourt to help carry them without Morant over those first 25 games of the season. There's every team around the league will have some interesting storylines to follow. So, and we'll of course get into it more over the course of the preseason as we get a closer look at those teams. But that's just the first thing to keep an eye on over this weekend, to know as we head into the weekend that plenty of preseason basketball should be on your TV. So if you're bored of football, your team's disappointing you by chance, we know it well, then you should be able to turn the TV over to a preseason basketball game. And it's, what's so good about preseason basketball is the fact that the outcome doesn't matter. So
It doesn't.
yeah, that's what's great. You can just watch it, enjoy it for what it is. If your team looks great, then you can just assume they're going to go 82-0. If your team looks terrible, then it doesn't matter because it's just the preseason.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's one of the best things. So next little thing here that obviously we should touch on is just the James Harden saga, the continuing of that. Did not show up at training camp or at media day, and the first day of training camp. The 76ers are out in Colorado for their training, out-of-state training camps, very popular, becoming more and more popular for across the league. It's always been a thing. The Lakers have always done it for a long time, but it's becoming more and more popular. So they're in Colorado, the Philadelphia 76ers.
Now that one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, the Bulls are in Nashville. All right, that's an hour and 20-minute flight. I get that. Philly to Colorado doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And I think they had because I think Chicago too. It's like it's not like the players are upset with Nashville. They decided that, like, they were part of the process of deciding it because they wanted somewhere that was still close to home. So I mean, I don't know why you'd want to go all the way. I mean, and it's nothing against Colorado. Colorado's a beautiful state.
It's a gorgeous state. I love it there, but that's a 3.5-hour flight from Philly. Like, that's not. It's not close, but whatever.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It wouldn't be my first. I would rather just stay somewhere close to home. But hey, whatever. They wanted to go. Maybe they just needed to get as far away from James Harden as possible, and then he just showed up. So
didn't work.
It's he did stay away for media day. He did stay away for the first preseason game, but James Harden did declare that he would report to camp. Adrian Wojnarowski was the first to report that, and then Harden did show up. And as far as we know, there's been no drama since he's gotten there. There's been no reports out of camp that he's been a nuisance. New head coach Nick Nurse, he didn't have anything, didn't seem negative to say. I think I was reading from The Athletic that Joel Embiid, said that Harden was professional on his first day, so or his first couple of days there with the team.
Good.
And all things considered, pretty big 180 from calling Daryl Morey a liar and saying that you're never gonna touch a basketball for the organization again, basically, for lack of better words. But he's there, and I don't know, Matt. Like, what exactly does that tell us about? Will he play for them if they don't trade him? Like, that's the big question now.
It seems like it, but it also seems like he's scheming something up. I don't know what it is. But he's got something up his sleeve. I don't know if he's gonna just pull a Houston and get eat a whole bunch again and put on some weight. I don't know what's going to go on there, but it seems like there's been too much smoke from him for him to just, oh, that's fine. Okay, season started. I'm going to go play. I'll be normal. I'll be fine. It's like, it seems like there's too many weird stories and too many weird occurrences around James Harden for this to just go normally until he's eventually traded.
Him showing up did surprise me. I thought he would hold out, but
I did not think. I figured he'd just use it as an excuse to not go to training camp, so he didn't have to go to training camp because nobody likes.
Yeah, we know
camp.
that. Yeah. But I mean, the him showing up is all about the money. Because if he doesn't, then eventually they start withholding those paychecks. I can't remember exactly. I had it up in front of me at some point, but I don't right now. I have a million tabs open on my computer. But it's there are rules in place that if you are not at training camp by a certain time, if you're not showing up with the team, even if you're not participating, you're just with the team. If you're not that, then you're not going to get your money. And, that's what we saw with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons at times ended up getting money withheld. And I think he ended up winning back a large amount of it through, going through the process and kind of rejecting that notion and talking with the league about it, which say what you will about that, whatever. But I think Harden understood that, hey, I want to he's always been about money, and he's understands that the only way for him to continue to get his money, which
is to show up,
is to show up. So, that's the question now is, does he continue to show up? He's made a lot of money throughout his career. Does he eventually just decide, fine, I'm just going to continue to sit out until I get traded? Will the team just tell him to sit out? Because I think that's the hard thing, right? Is if the expectation is that he will be traded at some point over the next handful of months and in the NBA season, do you want him even playing? I guess the hope.
Do you want to risk him getting hurt?
Well, there's that. Oh, that's a good point too. I wasn't even thinking that, but yeah, I mean, obviously him being hurt, but I was just thinking more of if he's leaving, wouldn't you rather your team, try to figure itself out and look like what it's going to look like without him? Don't you want Tyrese Maxey having more of those on-ball responsibilities and playing, that greater role as a facilitator, as opposed to Harden just being out there and eating up minutes that ultimately are going to be open once he's gone? I just don't know if it benefits them to keep them knowing he's going to leave. Now, if the hope is let's just hope that he continues to play the full season for us and it is what it is and he remains professional, then, I guess that's a possibility as well. But, I think it's more likely than not that if he plays for them to start the year, that we're going to see some of his old antics begin to show up. The effort's going to be low.
Yeah, very low.
And it's not gonna be pretty. So, but hey, he showed up to training camp, and it seems like everything's been going okay so far. I expect drama to come eventually, but for now, he's there, and that was one of the bigger surprises of this first week.
Did not see that one coming.
Moving on here. I wrote this down just because I think it's something to have on our radar. Drew Holiday, obviously now with the Boston Celtics, had a lot of good things to say about the organization. Apparently, he praised Joe Cronin for sending him to Boston. It was among the top teams that he wanted to join. Makes sense. They've been to 5 of the last 7 Eastern Conference Finals, and that's a team that he easily slides into. They needed a point guard. I think he might not be the most Drew's not the most traditional of point guards, but he can play next to Derek White if they want to play both of them. He also can, fits really well next to their wings as being, he's a great replacement for Marcus Smart. I think that Drew's a better defender than Marcus Smart is, even though Smart has won the Defensive Player of the Year. I would take Drew Holiday. So I was upset about that addition for them in that trade, which we've already, we've
talked about that last week a little bit.
Well, yeah, we've talked about, where he could end up, but I just think that, Drew ending up in Boston's great for them, not great for the rest of the East. And I think that, so he's already had discussions with the organization apparently about possible extensions, about extending with them into the future. And another report out of training camps where that Donovan Mitchell, on the other hand, hasn't had those discussions with the Cleveland Cavaliers, which we've discussed on the show before. He's one of those names to keep an eye on when it comes to stars that could be on the move, because if he's not committing, he doesn't need to right now. We should make that clear. He's under contract for a couple more seasons. It's not like he needs to sign a deal to extend right now. But I think this idea of the Knicks looming and
it just feels like he's going to be a Knick at some point.
Yeah, and just him not wanting to, it's not even though Cleveland has a great foundation, and I think it would be a good place for him, and he makes sense there, it's not shocking to hear he might not want to stay in Cleveland. Especially
no, I think he just wants to go. He's from New York. He wants to go home. Can't really fault the guy for that.
Right. So, but the fact that that he kind of seemed to shut down, the extension talks and things like that at training camp, it further coincides with that storyline of, okay, maybe he's not going to be there for the long haul, and that's okay for the Cavs in a sense, because they have a great foundation with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, but it is also a big loss because Mitchell was a big reason that they were in the mix last season at the top of the East, and if he does stay there, then that team is one of the more highly competitive teams in the East for a long time. If he leaves, then maybe they kind of take a step back just as they wait for Garland and Mobley to catch back up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the last thing here that I have written down to point out, Joel Embiid ended up committing to Team USA. He announced that on Thursday.
Why did I think he was French?
Well, so that's the thing is he is he
Okay,
had
I was not. I'm not an idiot. Not well, I am an idiot, but I'm not crazy.
well, he had the option to end up joining, I believe it was 3 or 4 different
Okay.
international teams. I'm going to try to pull it up in front of me. I know that France was one of them, and France was definitely in the running to try to pry him away. But and France obviously has a very good team. They have, but they have Gobert, and I don't see a world where Embiid and Gobert are making much sense together.
No.
But he ends up choosing Team USA. I believe Cameroon was another one of his options.
Seems like Team USA is probably the right choice if he wants to win a gold medal.
So yeah, Embiid had Cameroon citizenship, French citizenship, American citizenship. So those were the 3 options. I actually think it could have been really fun if he ends up going with like a team like Cameroon or something, or
and just see him putting up 40 shots a night, 40 shots a game in the Olympics, and he has 60 points.
Yeah, but I think it's obviously great news for Team USA because now we're talking about, LeBron, who we've said on the show before. That was a story earlier this offseason where LeBron is wanting to avenge the situation that played out at the World Cup. Team USA ends up finishing 4th in the FIBA World Cup this season, which is usually how it goes, right? Team USA underwhelms, and then a superstar-studded cast goes to the Olympics, and they own. So it looks like this might be our last run at the Olympics with guys like Durant, LeBron, Steph Curry, Devin Booker. All 4 of those have, verbally.
I could see Steph leading one more charge after this one. He's what, 34, 35?
I think he's 35.
That puts him right 4 years, right at where LeBron's at now at 39. I can see it.
It's possible. Yeah, it's not out of the question. I think Damian Lillard also said that he would be, interested in doing so. So it definitely sounds like this Team USA squad that it could be put together for this upcoming summer is going to be insane. And adding Embiid to that, it confirms that because I think there aren't a lot of American centers that are of the more elite caliber. I think their options would have been Bam, Bam Adebayo, who's great but a little bit undersized. And there's one other name that I'm blanking on that is a serviceable option. But
Jaren Jackson's a serviceable option.
Right, yeah. We saw him struggle a bit against the international play, which I was always a little worried about with the physicality, and he's also undersized. But Embiid, easy.
Won't have to worry about the physicality with Joel Embiid.
No, or the size. So
nope.
With that said, however, as I always make sure to reference when we're talking about Team USA and all these players who say they commit, we have a full 82-game season to play and 83 games for some in the regular season because you'd play an extra game if you win the in-season tournament. And then you have a whole playoffs, and all the guys that we're talking about that would be part of Team USA are likely going to be in the postseason. So the reality...
Nothing's happening till it's happened.
Yeah. When that reality begins to set in when you're, playing... You're playing in the Eastern or Western Conference Finals, and then right when the finals comes to a close that you're going to be headed out to Paris playing in more competitive games, and you're not going to be able to rehab your body in the fashion that you're used to. So we'll see. It's all good. It's a fun story right now. I hope it happens. I'd love to watch them just absolutely dominate the world, and they still will. Even if some of these guys don't go, they should still dominate.
They'll still have a good group of it. There will be a few of the stars that have pledged that end up probably not going, and that's okay. They'll still have a very star-studded group heading to Paris.
Exactly. But Embiid, if he's actually stays healthy, Embiid is one that I'm also very skeptical of because his health
never really healthy.
His health has been a major question. So fun in theory, but we'll wait to see what happens. Okay, that wraps up our weekly bullet points. We'll have plenty of more to get into over these next couple of weeks with preseason and training camp starting up. What I want to do now, however, is skipped it last week. Was it last week we skipped it? Yeah.
Yeah, we had stuff to talk about.
Yeah, we had stuff to talk about. We are going to instead get into the Northwest Division. We're going to continue our division digest. For those who maybe haven't listened, we have gone through, I believe, almost all the divisions. We have one left. And we give a headline for each team, and we give well, actually, this week we're not giving headlines because I forgot to write those down. So
That's all right.
we won't be giving a headline this week, but we're going to give you 4 front page stories, and that's fine. This will help us speed it up. We are going to give 4 front page storylines for each team in the Northwest Division this week. You can listen to all of the divisions except which one here? Let me pull up which one we haven't done.
We have done was the Pacific? Like the
That's
Lakers, Warriors,
Yeah,
Kings,
that
Clippers.
sounds
That's
right.
all a division, right?
That's the only squad that we
The
haven't gotten into.
California division.
Yeah, basically the East is completely taken care of. If you have any interest in hearing about those teams, specifically the Chicago Bulls, that was one of the Central Division was the first we've discussed, so you can go back and listen to that. Otherwise, we're going to get into the defending champs here, and next week we will get into some of the other competitive, some of the most competitive teams in the West. But yes, let's start this week here with the Denver Nuggets. So our 4 front page storylines for Denver. The first one seems pretty obvious, Matt, right? It's all about defending the title. This is as we've said on the podcast many times before, the finals hangover is real. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
thing that we see happen to teams every single year. I think it's going to be particularly an interesting case for the Denver Nuggets just because I don't know which way they're going to go. Like when you look at a guy like Nikola Jokic, you see someone who like he doesn't care to the extent that I don't know which direction a hangover goes. Like there could be 0 because of how amazing that he is,
Yeah.
or it could be an intense one because he doesn't care that much. He's like, I got one. It's whatever.
I'm good. Yeah.
I'm sure he wants more, but we know that this guy isn't doesn't care that much. So, I don't know what to expect. I lean towards the idea of them just being totally fine and dominant, and his mentality of just being, I come to work. This is what I do. I'm going to try to win again.
Yeah, I
And
lean towards that side too. It just seems like, yeah, I'm here. I might as well play well. Like I'm not gonna not try, but like I
yeah, I
also
mean, no,
don't
of course,
really
like it's
want
not
to
like
be
he's
here, but I'm here. So
Yeah, I just think that yeah, obviously the hangover is real, and we'll see how the rest of the roster kind of impacts. And you play a long season too, so coming in and starting right up again, especially with the target on your back, everybody knows you're the defending champs. When they come into your building, the energy is going to be that much more ramped up. So I think that and there's no denying that the motivation after you win one changes. That's why it's so impressive when these teams do string together, and that's why those teams are very much known in history when they string together multiple wins, right? If it's the Warriors, if it's the Lakers of the past, if it's the Bulls, like whatever franchises are able to keep getting back, it's always very impressive. And it says a lot about the foundation you have built. So I think Jokic is one of those kind of players, but he's also a guy we've never seen before in terms of his mentality. So I just don't know in this case what it would look like. And yeah, I guess what I wrote down here was that with the finals hangover, that I'm pretty sure Jokic could chug a bottle of Everclear and 9 Four Locos, and he'd feel nothing. And so
you just like,
that's
okay.
he wouldn't feel anything. And so maybe that's how he approaches the season. Maybe there's just zero hangover.
Did you see the video of him walking into the first preseason game back? Like they got the walk-in shot of walking underneath the stadium, and he looked almost like very stone-faced, but it was partially like, man, I wish I was home now. He just looked like so. But it's also like it's the same look he also has when he like drains a step back 3 from up here in the NBA Finals, just walks back down the court like, oh.
Yeah, and he's when he walks off the floor with like 40, 15, and 17, and he's just like, okay, can I go?
Game's over. I'm gonna go home.
Can I go ride my horses now? And can he ride horses? Like
I know he
loves
no.
horses.
I think
Do you think he can ride them?
I think he's got to be too big.
I think
he's got to be too heavy for horses.
A horse sees
right?
him and is like,
no,
I'm out of here.
Unless it's like one of those big, like the old Budweiser Clydesdale commercials.
Even those, I don't think they have any interest.
Think how far his legs would hang down the side too.
That's true. He could just walk while
he probably just walks with them and owns them. He probably doesn't ride them.
Yeah, he loves his horses, and I think he wants to get back to them, but yeah, we'll see what happens with this team. I think, or in terms of the title defension, defension, the title defension. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think my guess is they're going to be fine. They're going to be right in with it. I think Jamal Murray does have that DAWG dog in him. I think he's going to come out and I think he's going to come out and want an all-star nod, try to make an all NBA team, because his regular seasons have never lived up to his playoff success. So I think at the end of the day, that's individual motivation for him. And I think, losing a guy like Bruce Brown, which brings us to our second storyline here, is, part of also what makes this season a little bit interesting. I understand you have Jokic, you have Murray, like that's your foundation. You have Michael Porter Jr. Your main guys are still there, your core is still there. But at the end of the day, what Bruce Brown meant for that team was significant. And especially come the postseason time, I think when we talk about those players that you need in the locker room, that maybe if things do get a little bit stale in a year or two after or in a year after a finals, like Bruce Brown's probably that type that is, going to get you motivated. It's going to ensure that everybody's out there trying their hardest, because he's that grit and grind hustle player. So we've talked about how big of a signing that is for Indiana, even though how much they paid to get him. It should be worth it around Halliburton and their young players. But yeah, we shouldn't forget what he did for Denver. I mean, he shot 48.3% from the field last season, 35.8% from downtown. His defensive versatility is huge. I mean, he can guard, guys in the front court. He can guard along the perimeter. He's just that extra effort defender. And I think on offense, especially, like Jokic is the best guy to bring out what he does offensively. And just from what Brown does as a cutter, as an off-ball mover, like Jokic is always going to find that type. So I think, how do you fill his void in the rotation? Like, who's going to now be that extra energy guy? Like, Jeff Green's also gone. Let's remember that he went over to Houston. He was another guy that would give them some energy off the bench. So they signed Justin Holiday. Contavious Caldwell-Pope is what he is. I don't know if he can take on a bigger responsibility and kind of fulfill what Brown did, because Brown was so unique. Maybe a young guy. They do have a lot of younger guys on their roster, and so that's maybe one of those guys replaces it. But I think if we look at this team, even though like it's a little bit pulling at teeth, because they are like a very perfect team, they have their core still intact, but it wouldn't be shocking to me if we're watching this team midway through the season, we're like, who they really miss? Bruce Brown.
Yeah, like any team coming off a championship year, I feel like always has one of those guys, and one or two of those guys, and one of them gets, someone gets overpaid to go somewhere else. Like Bruce Brown said he wanted to come back to Denver. A team sees that guy, goes overpays to get him in there, and it's all about how do you replace him. The Nuggets seem like very similar team to the team they played in the NBA Finals last year, the Heat, in terms of being able to develop, younger players, replace those types of guys. But that's their assignment this year. They've got some new options in there, but they're going to have to do what a lot of teams have had to do in the past, and that's replace not your star in a championship effort, but kind of the key that kind of made everything go, or I guess the guy that the glue, I guess maybe to put everything
He's
together.
Like the guy that would be shoveling the coal into the fire.
He's the glue. He was the glue guy.
Yeah,
he kept everything together, and they're gonna have to, all the teams have to replace those guys all the time. Maybe that keys into an hangover following an NBA championship win to start the year. But I do think they get it figured out. They're just a really good organization. It seems like they know how to find these types of guys.
Right. The only thing, what I would compare it to is
my Xbox just turned on. I don't know why. That's terrifying.
Wow. What is it?
I don't know. I'm worried.
Is the AI takeover? The AI takeover is happening live on our on Points on the Podcast.
It's listening to
me. What I would also say, what I would compare it to a little bit is, if we remember Gary Payton, with the Warriors, they go and they win their finals, and Gary Payton's a big piece of that. Then he ends up getting a contract to join the Portland Trailblazers. And midway through that next season, the Warriors are trading for Gary Payton again.
5 second-round picks. Yeah. Every second-round pick you have.
Yeah, just give them back to us. So
that was my favorite part about that deadline. Just everybody was trading.
Everyone was just trading
5 second-round picks, 4 second-round picks, 8 second-round picks.
Well, if Jokic was a second-rounder, so everyone now just needs to get their hands on a Jokic.
Exactly.
So that, and I think Brown's better than Gary Payton is, but that's an example of
that's a great comp.
We've seen the Warriors in particular bring a lot of guys back. Same thing with Andre Iguodala. There's just guys that work in some places, and it's not that Brown didn't work in other places. He's been great wherever he was. He was good in Brooklyn. I'm sure he'll be good with Indiana. But there's just places where a guy truly fits, and that could have been Denver. And I think we might be asking that. So to wrap, we'll breeze through these next two here, but I think for Denver, the third front page story would be about their young roster. Like, I think since we're looking at a team that just won the finals, a lot of times you think that they're a veteran group. You think that they're these superstars. So not only is Jokic younger, he's only about 20, or he's only 28, I believe, but their supporting cast is really young. We're looking at like Christian Brown, who took on an increased role in the postseason last year, and he could be an option to fulfill kind of what that Bruce Brown role a little bit. He played 19 playoff games for them last year as a rookie, and I think the expectation for them when you look up and down their roster is and this is why they made some savvy moves to trade before the draft for some picks in this draft, some second rounders, some late first. They wanted to acquire more picks because I think after the success that they saw with Christian Brown, they thought, okay, we might have a good development in place. Jokic himself is just someone who can take advantage of anybody's skill set, I guess, in the best way. He's one of the best at doing it. Maybe we can grab some of these young guys, keep our our pay scale down because they're paying big money already for Jokic and Michael Porter Jr. and Murray and some of these guys. So let's see what we can get out of these young players. And so they have Zeke Naji, who's only 22, Peyton Watson, who's only 21, Jalen Pickett's a rookie, Hunter Tyson's a rookie, Julian Swather's a rookie. So there's a lot of guys on this roster who are going to be playing this season who are very young. And we're just going to have to keep a close eye on like who steps up, because I think not only do they need a couple of these young guys to play bigger roles throughout the season, but they're clearly expecting that to happen. They're clearly expecting some of these youngsters to be able to play to the level that we saw Christian Brown do it last season.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, when you start to lose these players like a Bruce Brown, but when you start to lose people from a championship team, you kind of have to start replacing those from within. You have to rely on drafting well, and that's something the Nuggets have done in the past.
Yeah, Hunter Tyson, I'd keep an eye. I mean, I think Peyton Watson, they're going to try to use a lot this season. He's heading into his second year, but I think I would keep an eye on Hunter Tyson, the rookie, just because he's a sharpshooter. He's one of those guys that if they're looking to space the floor, which they always are, and if Jokic is looking to find some three-point shooters, he's a guy that I would keep a specific eye on. Lastly here, Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. I think we shouldn't forget with Denver, a big part of their success last season, not only Jokic's dominance and the chemistry between him and Murray in the playoffs, but Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. had career years. Like Gordon just had easily his best season of his career. Now, I don't think enough people like really realize that or talk about that. It was a career high in points, a career high in offensive rebounds, career high in field goal percentage, career high in 3-point percentage. Meanwhile, Michael Porter Jr.,
that would be a career year.
Yeah, he would play the most games of his career last season. And he had a career high in points. He shot 41.4% from downtown on 7 attempts per game. And, it was, he stayed healthy for once. So like, I just think those are two guys that are obviously key parts of their starting lineup, and they got awesome play out of them, and they might not be talked about as much. I mean, Porter Jr. is talked about more than Aaron Gordon is, but they got great years out of those two. And if they want to continue this success, then it's pivotal that they continue to get strong play out of both those guys. If one of those guys takes a step back, then it automatically becomes a little bit harder to repeat as champions.
Yeah, and I mean, for Michael Porter Jr. especially, he was on the floor last year. When he's on the floor, he's really good, but they're just going to need him to stay healthy. And with him, unfortunately, for how talented he is, it's kind of always been the one issue with him is can he stay on the court? If he can stay on the court, I think he's going to have a really good chance to do what he did again last year. Aaron Gordon obviously has been relatively healthy throughout his career, but they're going to need him to stay healthy again too.
Right. Yeah, and especially if they can just get what they did last year out of him. Not saying he needs to have a career year again, but just kind of
be around those numbers.
Yeah, that would be outstanding. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, let's move on to the next team here in the Northwest Division. We have the Minnesota Timberwolves. So
great new uniforms this year.
Huh?
Great new uniforms this year. Going back to the old look. Oh, they're fantastic. When you get a chance, go look them up there. They were going back to like the old ones from the early 90s.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. I know what those look like. I just hadn't seen that was on the docket. So that's exciting. Yeah. I'm a big uni guy. I'm a big uniform guy. Not uni as in a British college, of just uniform. That's but yeah, I'm happy to hear that's the case. Okay, Minnesota Timberwolves first front page story here. Is this the Anthony Edwards coming out party? Like, I think after we watched the dominance in the FIBA World Cup from him, that was the biggest bright spot for Team USA. He was outstanding. He had that alpha dog mentality, and the question I think now is, does he become the does he become the guy? I've said before on the show that I wasn't very high on him coming into the draft. I just thought that there were some red flags there. He I knew the athleticism was there, but I just wasn't sure if he was like number one, caliber.
Mm-hmm.
And but he's proven me wrong in every fashion thus far. I think from an explosivity standpoint, just from an IQ standpoint as well, he's just becomes a smarter and smarter player. I compare him a lot to like he's like Carmelo mixed with like Dwayne Wade in a lot of ways. Just like the way that I feel like he
It's pretty
approaches
good comp.
the game. Yeah,
it's pretty impressive comp, I should say.
Explosive, just like Anthony Edwards. The athleticism, what was so jaw dropping. And the reason I kind of mentioned Carmelo is just because, Carmelo's was a bigger, force. I just think the way that Carmelo's footwork and his timing and his shot creation was like, we see that continue to improve with Edwards. So, he was a football star. You see that in the way he plays with his downhill game, the way that he just doesn't care about contact. And the big thing too is his defense. Like, he has the chops to be a very above average defender, somebody who is a true two-way player in this league. And when you do that, when you can become that kind of talent, you stand out even more in today's era of high offense and shot creation. So for me, I think this could be, the year for him. There's something standing in the way, but like, he's improved every single year of his career. He has new career highs every season. And I don't see why that wouldn't be, the case again this year.
Yeah, it seemed like you said the World Cup was kind of a nice coming out party, or maybe hopefully sign of things to come. It might be a better way to phrase that for him. But Minnesota can kind of go as far as his next step can take them. If he can take that next step, they can take the next step as a team. And if they won't, they're probably looking at the same type of, play-in type team, which is not a bad spot to be with where they're at, but it's probably what they're looking at again if he doesn't.
Right. And yeah, no, I mean, you definitely want to start to making more progress. I think for where Ant is and where how young he is, you feel okay being a playing team.
Oh, yeah.
But then you also have to factor in that you have Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert.
Gobert.
That's our second storyline here for this team heading into this year, is just, what does that tandem look like? Because I think there's no question, there's still major questions about like what they can do together and whether or not that they can coexist and make sense. There were questions at the time of the trade. Minnesota obviously gave up way too much for Gobert.
Yeah, I will never understand it.
Yeah, I there's nothing in me that
for understand.
I think it was Tim Connelly going from, and that was the thing too. Tim Connelly was so smart when he was with Denver, and he was one of the best executives in the league. So him going to Minnesota felt like such a big deal, and then he immediately makes this Gobert trade, and it's like, and Gobert is like the antithesis of everything that Jokic is. So I just don't understand I don't understand the thought process behind it. I can understand maybe wanting to see Cat play, less at the center position and just continue to make him a 4, but you need someone who can, I don't know. It was very confusing.
It is what it is. It's what they got now.
Yeah. So anyway, those two played 27 total games together. Let's not forget how few they were on the court. Both faced injuries, specifically Karl Anthony Towns only played 29 games last season. When they were on the floor together, they had an offensive rating of just 106.2. That's horrible. That's not good. Their defense now was fine. Their defense, and it was almost that same number. So the defense was, with Rudy, of course, is always going to be high. But the offense was just dreadful. And a big reason for that, again, is that not only is just Rudy not going to be able to offer you much in that category, but your best player is Anthony Edwards, who's at his best getting downhill. And who do you have clogging the paint? It's Rudy Gobert. And while Karl Anthony Towns is a great shooter, Karl Anthony Towns is also a very talented player when it comes to being in the post and getting in the paint. So it doesn't surprise me that when the two of them share the floor together, the offense is horrible. But again, it was only 27 games. So the question now is, you need to see them, what they can do, what they look like healthier, whether or not they can figure things out and build a little bit better chemistry and a better identity. my expectations aren't high. I think that they're going to be in a situation here where like one of those guys might have to get moved again down the road. It's going to be really hard to move Gobert, but maybe Cat is an option there. But yeah, that tandem obviously behind Edwards is the biggest thing for this team to figure out. And they invested a lot of money in it, in both players and assets. And it's time for them to show this year why they did that.
Yeah, at some point, I think this year, like you mentioned it, like one of them might have to get moved. And if you get halfway through a season, it's just not working. Like you might just have to, accept that this is not going to work and probably pull the plug. I think is, don't be too proud. Just pull the plug on it, make a move and make a move for your team. I don't know why.
Especially when you have
not be too proud is the phrase.
Yeah. Especially when you have Anthony Edwards, like you have one of the brightest.
You have this star. You have to like. Don't be afraid to, even if it's big tinkering. Don't be afraid to tinker until you get it right around your star.
Exactly. Yeah. Point guard, third storyline for Minnesota this season. The point guard spot has been one of some trouble for them in the past, just because they had D'Angelo Russell. They ended up sending him out. He was not the right fit there, and yeah, so I think they ended up getting Mike Conley at the trade deadline last year. Conley played remarkably well for them when he arrived. Averaged 14 points, 5 assists, 1.2 steals per game. Shot 42% from downtown, which was huge. I think the question, though, is he's 35 years old. Like, are they going to be able to continue to get that production? Maybe, because there's not a ton of responsibility on his plate with the supporting cast that he has around him. It's not like he needs to have this high usage rating. Mm-hmm. But they don't have a lot of options. It's Conley. Jordan McLaughlin's still there, but he's struggled to become any kind of true difference maker. So Conley brings great veteran presence, something that I think they need in their locker room, and they saw last year that he was definitely helpful. But it's like he's not your future point guard, and he's not your you can't necessarily rely on him to stay healthy. So I think that's the big question for them is what do they get out of that position all season long? They're one of those teams that are similar to kind of a squad like the Chicago Bulls, right? Like they have all these star players, but none of them are at that point guard position. None of them are true facilitators. So they have the 7th worst assist to turnover ratio last season. Like if they want the offense to improve, someone needs to be there to help run the show. And I think Conley can do it for a year. But also he's
a transition guy. Like he's a transition guy to whoever the next guy is. And that's another good point. One, he's always had issues with being healthy for full seasons, and last time I checked, the older you get, your body does not get healthier and stay healthier easier. It usually is the opposite. So that's something they're gonna have to figure out this year.
Yeah, 3-point shooting remains a big thing for this Timberwolves team. That's the 4th storyline here. I think that they're going to continue to really emphasize that a lot. They were top 13 in 3-point percentage last season, and that was even with Karl Anthony Towns, being sidelined for a lot of it. They were top 15 in attempts. I'm not going to be surprised if we even see that number go up more. I think that they invested in some more shooters. Obviously, Conley, we said, shot 42% nearly from downtown last year, but they have Cat, they have Ant, they have Jalen McDaniels. They signed Troy Brown Jr., who can be inconsistent behind the 3-point line, as Bulls fans have seen, but he had a career year shooting it last season. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker is there. So I think they're just going to be a high-volume 3-point shooting team. And I think they tried to kind of create that identity last year, but we're going to see that even a little bit more this season. All right. Moving on to our third team here is the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Eli's favorite team.
I do love the
favorite team. So do I.
Yeah,
fun.
This team is one of my favorites in the league. Probably one of my top league pass teams for the season. I will enjoy every game that I see this team, and I'll enjoy them on opening night against the Chicago Bulls. That'll be you can't sleep on them getting that win. So front page storylines for the Thunder. Of course, we have to start with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We've talked about him plenty of times on the show, Matt. You love him. I love him.
So good.
He's just so talented. One of the best two-way guards in the NBA. He took that leap last season, averaged 31.4 points per game, shot 51% from the field. He had 10.9 free throw attempts per game. There's really the only question with him now is just like, does he truly join that superstar tier of players? Because he looked the part last season. And I think the only way you officially join it, right, is if he gets this team into the playoffs and he gives them a competitive first round series. I don't think it's out of the question, but that's the biggest storyline, right, for them heading into the season is, okay, does not only Shea match what he did last year, but does he take it up a level in terms of finding this team some more success?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was had the most
No,
blank out
no,
there.
you're fine. You're fine. I
But no,
wasn't.
I'm excited to watch him. Obviously, like he's grown the last few years. Hopefully, take another step. But I mean, we've talked about it a bunch on the show with this team. Like they have such a fun young core. To see him keep growing as the superstar around like a developing young core that I know we're going to get to here. The League Pass team, if I had NBA League Pass, I know you keep mentioning they're one of your League Pass teams. If I had League Pass, they would be one of them too because they're just such a fun young team to watch. I watched them at the United Center last year for when the Bulls when they came in and beat the Bulls, I believe. They're just fun. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is so much fun to watch. That's just the one word that keeps popping in my head with the Thunder is fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think part of that fun, especially this season, will be Chet Holmgren. That's our second biggest storyline
Stay
for this
healthy.
year.
Please stay healthy.
Please stay healthy because I think he is an unusual player in a lot of ways. There's a lot of questions in terms of what he can, um, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see it to believe it with him. That's a big thing. But let's not forget he was the number 2 pick in the draft, in the 2022 NBA draft. He was, a highly touted prospect. Was very much in the running for the number 1 overall pick for a while.
He was like the number 1 pick for a long time, and then just kind of towards like the end of the year draft time kind of switched.
Yes. Yeah, he was long considered going to be the number 1 pick, and yeah, ended up going number 2, obviously, and it's because of that rare style of play at the center position. He's extremely versatile, stands 7 feet tall, is defensively is where he'll immediately make an impact, or should at the NBA level. He's definitely thinner. There's concerns about some of the physicality he can take, but like as a shot blocker, his defensive instincts, and his length, he has an elite length. It should make an immediate impact for this Oklahoma City team. He's one of the most talented shot blockers that we've at least shot blocking prospects that we've really ever seen, and he should fit in well too with how this team wants to space the floor and move, because you're playing him with Shea, right? You want to keep the lane open for Shea. Well, Chet can definitely stretch the floor for you. He can definitely hit threes at a high clip. He can handle it a little bit like a guard, which has always been one of the more intriguing things. I do have some questions about, we hear that about a lot of big guys who at the college level are able to do that and then come in the NBA and you're playing higher level defenders. You have a harder time putting it on the ground and attacking like we saw them do in college. And so whether or not, like Wemby's another guy, right? Like Victor Wembanyama, big appeal for him is that 7-foot frame, but he can put it on the ground and he can move like a guard. We'll see how well and how frequently they actually do that at this level. But it's something that Chet can do. So the Thunder were already the 13th best defensive team last season. Chet's going to continue to keep them right up there in that conversation for a top 13, top 10 defensive rating. And then offensively, it'll take some time to probably get into a groove there, but there's a lot to like in terms of what he can provide. So this is going to be his rookie season. Keep an eye on him and don't forget that he's very much a part of what they're building there.
Yeah, I was going to say it if you didn't pop in there. Like missed sole rookie year, like this is his rookie season, so there's still going to be a little bit of a learning curve. But you talked so much about his defensive instincts and his instincts on that side of the floor. Like as long as those are still flashing, you can let the offense come. Everything else will come. But if the instincts that we were seeing defensively, at least in college, are there, I'm not really too worried about what he's going to turn into and develop, especially around a very deep young team that's not going to ask him to come in and be, best player on it ASAP right away.
Well, and I think too with Victor Wembanyama, right? Like I don't want to compare these two too much. Like Victor's the better prospect, obviously.
It's a fair Victor is Chet Holmgren on, not because there's both thin, but on steroids. Like in terms of he's not actually on steroids because he's really thin too. But like that type of player, just like he's taller, he's better shooter, like all these types of things.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. And I think that and I think I approach like this upcoming season for Victor in a lot of ways that I would see it for Chet. Right. Like I think that Wembanyama I think he can make a bit better offensive impact, but like it's all going to come on defense first. Like that's where I think we're going to see him make the biggest impact. And we just need to watch how they're moving. Right. Like That's the big thing at the NBA level. Like that's what was so intriguing about them in college and overseas is just the way they move for their size. And are they continuing to move that way with confidence at the NBA level? The next thing here is the third storyline revolves around just their offensive identity for me. So we talk about defense. We talk about how solid they should be on that end of the floor. They have hustle guys. Shea, leads the way in terms of kind of setting the tone defensively, but Jalen Williams is a high level defender. Lou Dort is obviously an in-your-face kind of guy. They have plenty of good defenders, but figuring out their offense a little bit needs to fall into place. They were 24th ranked in effective field goal percentage, even though they were 16th in offensive rating. They had the fourth lowest assist percentage. It was Shea, right? It was go to the basket. It was get to the line, and he did a great job of it. But at the end of the day, we know that
it's not sustainable. You need to develop more, help around him, other sets. Obviously, I always bring comps back to the Bulls because that's who I watch. But when the Bulls offense would get stagnant, it would be Zach or DeMar has the ball at the top, and everybody just kind of go to their corners and see if they can score. It's going to work some nights, but for an 82 game season, that's not going to be sustainable. Also, it puts an incredible beating on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's body as well.
Yeah. Your ceiling's only so high when that's the kind of offense that you're running. So I think this team has the pieces to be a much more diverse offense, a much more creative offense. They have a lot of off-ball talent, a lot of guys who move hard off the ball. They have a lot of solid shooters too. So I think you need to find somebody to be a little more of that creator, a little more pass happy. And also Shea can help in that way a little bit. He can take his foot off the gas a little and try to trust his teammates to sink some more shots. But that's definitely something that they need to figure out. And this goes into my fourth storyline here is who's that co-star for Shea and who is it that can help get everybody else involved, right? You got to look at Josh Giddey. I think that's the first guy that you have to look at. One of the smartest young players in the NBA. He's just entering his third season. If anyone can help set the table on offense and make it a more creative environment and get the ball moving and push the pace, like it's him, right? He's extremely smart. And I kind of wrote down just like a bullet point in front of me is, can Josh Giddey start this season become, what Desmond Bane was for Ja Morant, what he's become for Ja Morant. I'm not saying exactly in terms of play style, but in terms of that co-star, right? Now it's clear that Memphis has the idea of Ja's number one and Desmond Bane's number two. Can they get this? Can they get something here now where Shea's our number one and Giddey's our number two? I think that'll be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that's good. I like that point because as much as we've talked about their roster being young and fun, it was Shea and then a bunch of number threes and depth players. They do need that number two to kind of step up and separate himself from the rest of the pack. And Josh Giddey does have the best chance to do that.
Yeah. Or Chet, but not this season.
Not this year. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Eventually Chet.
Yeah. Eventually Chet could be the guy. Okay. Moving on here to the Utah Jazz, our fourth team here in the Northwest Division. So here's the deal with the Jazz, right? I think the first storyline that I have is just like, what's the plan? Like we shouldn't forget that Utah started off last season in pretty jaw-dropping fashion, right? They had a winning record through December basically. As the season went on, they obviously fell off, and I think that was kind of by design. I don't think they were planning to be a very competitive team overall. No. They wanted to get a good draft pick, which they did, and they ended up drafting a really great player. So I think that it ended up being a win-win season because you saw some progress. You got great stuff out of Lauri Markkanen, which we'll talk about in a second. But I think they need to now figure out what the lane is here, right? Because now is the year where you're trying to push for the playoffs. Like, are you looking to actually be competitive, or are you looking to prioritize lottery odds and assets? Because I think while they are young enough and they do have enough assets in their arsenal to just go for it and try to get their players some playoff experience if they want, I also think the last place you like to be, right, is in the middle and pick this path of mediocrity. Yep. So I think I'm just curious to see like what if we get a better idea of what their plan is here. Are they going to continue to be aggressive in making trades and adding some talent? They were a team thrown out as having interest in Tyler Hero. So and not saying I think that they're going to land Hero anytime soon, but if they're interested in Hero, then clearly they're interested in potentially landing some other guys too. So I think at the deadline this year and just as the season goes on, like what are we finding out about what they're prioritizing?
Yeah, I think it's just a wait and see approach for him kind of this year. Like
It could be.
they have, like I know our next topic we're going to talk about Laurie, and then I think we got John Collins in there too. Like he was the big addition this year. Like how do those guys work together? Is he actually this good? Was last year a little bit fluke? Be somewhat in between? Just kind of see where year two of this group goes because they showed flashes early last year. Obviously fell off, and if they show they can kind of do it again, then yeah, I think you see a team at a deadline that is maybe looking to go add some pieces they think can help build around.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, I think it depends a lot on this. Is our second storyline is how highly do they value Markkinen, because it finally happened for him last season. He's
Shocker, he
always
gets away from here and it works.
gets away from Chicago. Hey, he's had a stop in Cleveland and he just looked like nothing. So he had
He
a
did
fine
look
year, but he
terrible in
looked
Cleveland.
no, he was okay in Cleveland. It's just he looked like he was a role player and he was a 3-point shooter, and that was it. So he goes to Utah. They give him the ball. They say it's it's all you. And we saw the well-rounded, like on-ball scorer that we all thought he could be. And that was another guy. We talk about these bigger bodies who had the intrigue revolved around the fact that they could handle it. They could push they could grab and go in transition. Like that was always what was so interesting about Markkinen, but a lot of it was the mentality. Like he just didn't have that confidence to go and do it, and that vision, that court vision to go and do it. But that wasn't the case last season. He was fully confident. He was attacking off the dribble. He shot the lights out of the building. It was 25. So he averaged 25.6 points per game, 8.6 rebounds, shot 39% from behind the arc on nearly 8 attempts per game. And his 70% success rate at the rim was a huge step in the right direction, because he was somebody who would always, again, going back to that confidence, it was like, you have the strength, you have the, skills. Like, why aren't you, when he was the ultimate missing dunks guy. He would miss, he would be hitting dunks off the back of the rim. He would just like go up for a thunderous dunk and always somehow miss it. So just seeing him play with more confidence last season was huge. But now is the question is, how highly do they view that? How much does he help Utah win? Do they see him as a number 2? He's not a number 1, like he's not going to turn into a true number 1. But
he's played better when he's been, and I know he's not a true number 1 on an NBA championship team, but like even going back to when he was here, like he kind of played his best when he wasn't kind of going, like he always deferred to Zach when Zach was on the floor.
Right.
Like when Zach was out or when he wasn't on the floor, like that's when he played his best. Goes to Cleveland, obviously more of a role player there, was whatever, just fine, spot up 3-point shooter, whatever. Then he goes to Utah where he's kind of like able to be the best player on the floor most nights, and he takes off. So maybe he's one of these guys that like when he's the guy, he's great, but when he has to, coexist with somebody else, he ends up deferring too often. Because that was his problem here. I'm not saying like he gets pouty when he's not the best player on the floor, but it's almost like he's overly deferential to players that are seen as, the best player.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a concern, and it's something that we'll have to figure out, and that's why he's one of the main storylines. Is like, what is he exactly for you moving forward? Because I think we all agree, especially now that we saw it, now that we saw a full season playing the way that many people thought that he could play. What does that mean now moving forward? How do you build around that moving forward? Mm-hmm. And can it be sustainable, right? Or is it going to be like Julius Randle 2 years ago when he made an All-NBA, or 3 years ago, I guess at this point, when he made an All-NBA team, and then the next year it was all messy, and last year he was good again. But it's just, are you going to get this up and down thing from Lauri Markkinen, or is this the player that he is now? Is going to be the thing that they need to figure out as they continue to build their team.
Yeah.
The next point here is John Collins. You brought it up, the third storyline. They acquired John Collins from the Hawks earlier this summer. They were seemingly always interested in adding him into the mix. They were always rumored, as a team that was interested in pairing him with whatever they were doing at the time. And I think he fits pretty decent with Markkinen. I think the fit next to him is fine, and to the team that they have. John Collins was he was one of those guys that had that like really good one season, and then you were like, okay, this guy seems like something, like, because we didn't expect much from him, and now he seemed like he broke out. So I guess the plan, you just got to see what he does there for you. You have a decent, like, young-ish kind of core there with Markkinen and Collins and Walker Kessler, like 3 big athletic guys who Walker Kessler's not your traditional peak athleticism, but a big body. Like they're going to be one of the bigger teams in the NBA with those three guys, which is going to give them a little bit of a different identity than some teams. So it'll just be interesting to see how they use him and whether or not I guess he can return to what we saw from him in Atlanta about 3 years ago or so. They clearly think so, and Danny Ainge is pretty good at seeing that stuff. He saw it with Markkanen, so I guess maybe he sees it with John Collins.
Yeah, when it's Danny Ainge making the moves, I just tend to usually trust them because they usually end up working out for him.
Yeah, they usually end up being pretty good. Last thing for Utah is the backcourt, right? We talk about the front court. We talk about at least small forward, power forward, center. You have Walker Kessler, you have John Collins, and you have Lauri Markkanen. So I think how are you filling in that backcourt? What kind of players are you going to fill in that backcourt with? Because I think you have a guy like Jordan Clarkson who has been really talented, really good scorer, but he doesn't necessarily fit well with those guys. He's that 6-man type. So who's your starting point guard? What's your guard rotation look like? They have a lot of options. They got, Ochai Agbaji. They have Taylor Horton-Tucker, Colin Sexton, Romeo Langford, Chris Dunn. None of those names jump off the page by any means. But those are guys that are on the roster, guys they can mess around with. And then, of course, the big name is Keontae George out of Baylor. That's who they drafted this season. He played a few games at Summer League, averaged 25 points, 6 assists, 2 rebounds, 1 steal.
Let's see what he's got.
Yeah.
Throw him in there.
He was great. So, again, he's more of that scorer, but and that's fine. I think that gives them a little bit more versatility when they have that guy who can do it in the front court and a guy that can do it. I mean, Markkanen, again, he plays at the wing. He plays the 3, so he's kind of in the backcourt as well now. But still, it gives you an option. So he's going to be the guy that they're going to go with at the point guard position. And I think just seeing if he can be their answer there and make some sense will be big. So that's the big thing. It's a big figure it out year. Like, again, what's the path that we're going with here?
Yeah.
All right. Agreed. Last team is the Portland Trail Blazers. This is the Portland Trail Blazers. We talked about them a little bit.
Touched on them earlier. Yeah.
The show. 4 front page storylines are pretty simple. I think they're all just players. Like that's what I have to do with these teams that are in rebuild mode, right? Like they don't really have an identity. They don't have things they need to fix necessarily. You can't, it's hard to evaluate a team when they're this young and you talk about their defense or what they need to do. Like, no, they just have players that need to step up. So I think, or that you need to see if they can develop. So it starts with Scoot Henderson and, the Scoot era is here. He's the kind of talent that you move a guy for Damian Lillard for. Talked about him in the past on the show. By all accounts, great leader, great locker room guy, the type of player that you want to start a rebuild of your franchise around, which is exactly why they did that. He is one of the most athletic guards we've seen into the league ever. He's on that Russell Westbrook level. I know Westbrook, that name throws a lot of people for a loop sometimes, but it
gets lost how good he was for a stretch there.
Yeah, and Scoot, it's
I know he's
not
a punchline now, but
yeah, but we can't forget that he probably is the most athletic point guard ever. You can throw.
He almost saved the Bulls last year too, but he went to the Clippers instead.
Yeah, he would have saved the Bulls. And you can throw Derrick Rose into the conversation, obviously as well. John Morant, like those guys. That's the type of athleticism we're talking about with Scoot. So, but I think what makes Scoot even or just as special or different in his own way is the mix of court vision, the basketball IQ. And just the overall feel for the game that he has is high level coming into the league. He played 2 seasons for G League Ignite. He was playing against men. He was playing against the big boys in the G League. I think he's going to come in and he's going to be good right away. Like this is a guy who I expect to make an impact immediately. I don't think that he's going to be, he'll have his rookie mistakes, of course. And he's going to have his inefficient nights, especially because his 3-point shot isn't there yet. That has to still develop. But in terms of people who can, like we talk about the rookie of the year race, right? Like obviously Wemby's the favorite, should be the favorite. But we shouldn't sleep on Scoot just having the ability to do whatever he wants on Portland. And I think he's going to look great.
Yeah, we were talking about Chet Holmgren, the learning curve a little bit. The learning curve is a lot less for Scoot Henderson because he was in the G League. He was playing up against grown men. Like he's a little bit more used to the pace, the style of basketball he's going to get into. So it shortens the curve a little bit for him.
Exactly. Yeah. It's huge to have that experience with that pace. And we're talking about a guy who already has a high feel for the game. He has a feel for this game, for this NBA version of the game. Shaden Sharp is the next storyline here.
Such a great name,
I
Shaden
know.
Sharp.
Isn't it a great? Yeah, it's a
It's
great
a
basketball
fantastic
name.
name.
Yeah, Shaden Sharp is like he's just he gives Portland potentially already one like the best young backcourt. And you throw in Anthony Simons too, who's a very high level scorer. But Shaden Sharp is another high energy guard, great athleticism. I keep throwing out that word, but like this Portland team is so athletic, it's ridiculous. It's like those two guys in particular. Like when you talk about the most athletic players in the draft, it was Scoot last year. 2 years ago, it was probably Shaden Sharp. Like a lot of people talked about how it was arguably Shaden Sharp was the most like purely athletic player in that draft. So, yeah, highlight. He's gonna add a level of scoring for them that I think they need, a level of shooting next to Scoot that works really well because, like we said, Scoot still needs to develop as a long range threat. Shaden has deep range, and I think using his ability also off ball, he has a lot of Zach LaVine in him, Shaden Sharp, and just the way that he's able to, or in not maybe in him right now, but in what he could be, because as an off ball scorer, as somebody with that level of like fluidity in his game and around the rim, like I can see Scoot and him being a good 1-2 punch just because off ball Sharp's going to make a lot of sense. And I think Scoot can play off ball in some instances as well. But I think Sharp he can score at all three levels. And I think next to having that next to Scoot is going to work out nicely. So I just think those two as a pairing make a lot of sense. And we could see it immediately. Sharp already has that full year in the NBA, had some big moments last season at times. So he should be more comfortable coming into this year too.
Yeah, and I think they, like you said, their styles really fit well together. Sharp's ability to score off ball, Scoot's shot not being there yet. I just think they're going to work really well together. Not going to be as much of a growing, learning curve. I'll use that word again. Adjustment period to playing with.
No, I think I mean that's a big thing. Like obviously, yes, there's good like there will be a learning curve.
Yeah, they're still young and there's going to be lapses, but like it's not. I don't think it's going to take a ton of learning how to play together. As
right. It's not as big as like Houston's was 2 years ago or like last year, even like when Houston was starting over with Jalen Green and everybody. Like like that team just was dumb and young, and like they had pieces, but they were dumb and young. And like I think Portland's going to be smart and young, and
I like that.
And that's a difference. So
DeAndre Portland, smart and young.
Smart and young. All right, last 2 points here. I'll wrap them up quick. We've talked about DeAndre Ayton in the past, so he's obviously the third. He's the third storyline. On one hand, I think that that we shouldn't sleep on him, being here because being in Portland, it's obviously a change of scenery. He was a prime change of scenery candidate the past couple of seasons. He now gets a little more offensive freedom. I bet his numbers will look a lot closer to what they did a few years ago and probably be career highs. But on the other hand, he's got to just figure out how he fits in and how he can coexist with the pieces they already have in place, because they're clearly high on him. That's why they wanted to acquire him, and I think it was smart of them to do so. But guys like Sharp and Scoot rank higher on the list of priorities than him. So I think we got to see how he fits in. But 7 foot, huge athlete, just huge presence. Great.
Can't teach size.
Yeah, can't teach size, and you can't teach movement. He's another one of those guys that moves pretty well, moves his feet well. He's not going to be putting the ball on the ground by any means, really, but he's just moves well. And I think pairing him next to a high-level guy like Scoot, high IQ guy, I should say, like Scoot, around the rim, it should do well. So I think them in the pick and roll could work out pretty nicely. But yeah, they got to see if they made the right move going after him. I'm going to guess that it will look fine. Like I think it'll make sense for what they were looking for.
Yeah, and I think he'll thrive more in a role where he's more of a leader on a team and more of I don't want to say alpha because it's still Scoot Henderson, probably Shaden Sharp's team, but probably plays a bigger role in the offense than he was in Phoenix when it was kind of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and so many options there.
Yeah. Okay, last thing for Portland to wrap up our Northwest Division digest. I just wrote down what happens with Jeremy Grant. He's
got to play at least half a season here.
There's not much. Yeah, he can't get traded right now because he signed that extension. So some time's gonna have to go by before they can move him. But at the same time, is anyone gonna want to acquire him? Because it's not easy to, and it's not like salary. It's not just like you can take on his salary for a season and then move on from him. Like this is a guy who just signed a 5-year, $160 million deal like this offseason with Portland.
Yeah.
So if you trade for him,
Yeah.
you have him for 5 more
5
years.
years.
And yeah, so he's and here's the thing. I think that he could help out a contender easy. And I think that he could be a really good piece for contenders around the league. But the question has always been, does he want that kind of role? Because he wants to be an on-ball scorer, but where he really is at his best is being versatile on defense and kind of impacting things off the ball a little bit. But yeah, 27 million this year and only goes up. 29 million, 32, 34, 36.
Maybe he's just cool with like hanging out in Portland for a while and making a lot of money and playing pressure-free basketball.
I could see a situation though where Portland's like this stinks because he wants the ball in his hands, but they need their other guys to have the ball in their hands. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's just okay.
And it could be fine if he just buys into his role and he just be the veteran guy and he gets paid handsomely. Then fine.
I mean, when he signed that deal, he had to have known this was at least a possibility.
Oh, yeah,
so
you take the money,
but also you throw that like if you're gonna pay me that much money, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Like you don't want me to be a ball scorer, that's fine. Like you already made your last big contract, so I don't know.
Yeah, he's only like 27.
Really? I feel like Jeremy Grant's. I guess Zach LaVine was in the league at like 18 or whatever. So
he's 29. He's 29. Okay, he's 29.
Yeah, this is his last big contract.
So yeah, last big contract. Whatever. That's a complicated situation. We'll have to see what happens.
That's one to monitor throughout the year. That's one nobody has any idea how it's gonna go.
Yeah, my guess is he's just there for a few years, like the Tobias Harris situation where Philly just had him. You just had him, and I mean Tobias Harris has been fine there, but it just is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. That wraps things up. So we got one more division to do, and then we'll do that next week. And then the week after that, let's see, what's the date today? We're recording on
October
the
6th.
So we are 2 weeks and 4 days or so away from the start of the NBA season. So we're inching closer. We're gonna do a division next week, and then I think after that we'll probably do some over-unders. We'll give some win projections, and that will be that. So
I love that.
That's where we're going to wrap up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back, obviously, next week for another round to finish up Division Digest. So thank you, everybody.